Welcome to The Big Picture. I'm Phil Arno. Today we're going to talk a little bit about government and politics, and in the past, my philosophy has always been, even before Trump was on the scene, that government should be about common sense. Government should be solving problems with a very healthy dose of common sense. Unfortunately, politics, which is the other side of government, has nothing to do with common sense. It's all, and it doesn't have anything to do with solving problems either. It has to do with power and getting ahead, just being in office as opposed to losing power. And they don't mix very well. And that's one of the reasons that I think nationally and in New York State and even locally, politics kind of ruins government, for lack of a better way to put it. Well, today, my guest is somebody who is very familiar with government service. Ed Rath has been an Erie County legislator, and he's been a state senator, and he's now running to get back into the race. Welcome to the show, Ed.
Well, thank you very much for the invitation, and I very much agree with your philosophy that you were just sharing there. We need much more purpose in government and a lot less politics.
Well, it seems to me whenever a government official / politician talks about things, they're always talking about how they need more taxes, or they're going to punish the rich, or they're going to call somebody a racist. They're not talking about productive, how I'm going to solve a problem.
I agree.
They're talking about division, and they're talking about giving things away.
And quite often what we're seeing in government, both at the state level as well as at the county level, is the use of taxation is the only option. And to me, taxing and increasing taxes should be a last resort. It shouldn't be the only option that government utilizes. We should be looking at government efficiency. We should be looking at inter-municipal cooperation. If it's with infrastructure and highway work, if it's with law enforcement, there are many ways in which governments can collaborate to lower their costs. But many times the majorities, both in Albany as well as the majority here in Erie County, only looks at taxation. And that's frustrating because people are fed up, and we are in the middle of an affordability crisis right now. We had the opportunity in Erie County to lower the gas tax significantly a couple of weeks ago, and the majority in the county legislature disagreed with lowering about maybe let's call it 15 or 20 cents off of a cost per gallon of gas. And when gas is $4.60, if you're saving 15 or 20 cents, people will drive around town to look for that discount.
Right.
So any relief that we can provide, government should be doing that. Instead, they're saying, well, we're not convinced that it works. Well, guess what? Putting money back in the pockets of the taxpayers where it belongs, that's what works, not in the pockets of government. Well,
and I'll ask this to the audience. When was the last time you ever heard a politician say, we're spending too much money? We basically need to cut back on our spending. Most of the time you hear, we need more money. We need to raise taxes, whether it's on the rich or, whatever boogeyman they can come up with. They say, we just don't have enough money. We need more. And that's not the way economics works. It's like if you're at home and you have credit card debt and you can't pay it, you don't go out and spend more money in order to get rid of that credit card debt. That's not how it works. It's not common sense.
That's exactly right. And government now is not looking through the lens of common sense. They're looking through the lens of politics. They're looking through the lens of what agenda do I need to carry out to take care of the special interests that are very much in the ear of the majorities, both in Albany as well as in Erie County. And it's frustrating because if you look at it and if you think about it, if you were to run government like a business, if you were running a business, I should say, like the government is right now, that business would be bankrupt. It would be out of business. It would be defunct. And you've seen such a mass exodus out of New York State of the people who sign the front of paychecks, the business owners, and they're never coming back. And I have used this quote many times, and it's so accurate, from Maria Bartiromo on Fox Business. She says, money is mobile and it goes where it's treated best. Well, that money is now being treated much better in Florida and Tennessee and the Carolinas and Texas than it is in New York. And good luck, Kathy Hochul, getting them to come back, because they're not coming back as much as you may be trying to do that in this election year.
Well, I've cited this before. The Business Council of New York puts out a report. And their last report, they basically said that in 1 year alone, New York State has lost almost $10 billion just to Florida in tax income, okay? On top of that, in the 4 years since Kathy Hochul has been governor, New York State has lost over $1 trillion in assets. Now, when I say assets, I mean businesses, financial institutions that have gone to other states in general.
For sure.
Those people and those assets that we're losing, that's not the ones that are receiving government benefits. That's the ones who are financing government benefits.
I agree, Phil.
When you get rid of the ones who are paying into the system and retain the people who are living off of the system, that's unsustainable.
It's unsustainable, and we can do better. We can do far better in Erie County, and we can do far better in New York State. We need to have responsible and practical leadership. And it's leadership that listens to business owners. It's leadership that listens to the middle class. It's leadership that pays attention to the priorities that people have. Erie County is a wonderful place to live, work, and play. This is where I've lived almost my entire life, and many people I know have come back to Western New York because of the quality of life, because of the incredible education our children get, because of the cultural destinations that we have, our sports teams, our restaurants. Everything about Western New York is incredible, but we can do better. And that's one of the reasons why I'm running for office this year, is because I believe there's a plan for us to improve on what we have in Erie County. I think we're devoid of responsible leadership right now in some ways, and that's why I'm stepping forward, is to offer those practical, common sense, and responsible leadership ideas for the people of Erie County and the 6th District.
Well, since you bring up Erie County and the Erie County government, and specifically, what's your take on the status of Erie County? What needs attention? What needs to be changed?
For sure. I would say the first thing that needs attention is our infrastructure, our roads and bridges. This is a constant reminder. Pothole City, that's exactly right. We shouldn't be known as Pothole City. And I make a joke that when you're driving down a county road, it shouldn't be a slalom course in your car, right? You should be able to drive smoothly down the road.
People behind me think that I might be, impaired because I'm going like this going down the road.
We're all kind of channeling Michaela Schifrin, right, as we're driving down the road these days. But that's the problem, is that infrastructure is discretionary and where that money is spent, and it's a constant reminder of either good government investment or failed government investment. So number one, let's prioritize our infrastructure. And if you think about county roads, and this is a very easy way to do this, county roads normally connect towns. So if you look at a big road like Maple Road that becomes Griner and Clarence, that connects towns. So smaller roads usually stay within a town, and that's the town's responsibility. Now, the highway superintendents in Amherst, Clarence, and Newstead do a wonderful job within the boundaries of their town. But there's also, like I said earlier, opportunities for collaboration amongst our highway departments at the town level and at the county level. That's a way in which we can reel in some costs.
People, I think part of what this boils down to is, in New York State, obviously, and this is no secret, Democrats run the state. And here in Erie County, we got Poland Karts, who's the county executive. We have in Buffalo, it hasn't had a Republican mayor since the 1950s.
That's right.
And we can't really say that Buffalo is a thriving crown jewel of the Northeast. It boils down to the voters, because that's where it all comes together. The people who vote these people into office.
I agree. And an important point is that we need to have public officials who work with open hands and sit around a negotiation table, if you will, and say, this is what I'm looking to do. I'm looking to collaborate. And I describe politics as a bell curve. And a bell curve obviously has a very wide middle, and it has the narrow tails at the end. The extremes are the tails on the far left and on the far right. but 80% of the people reside in the middle. That's where the government should reside, working in a collaborative and an open-handed way. And I've known the county executive for a long time. We're friends. He's a nice guy. I don't like his ideas, but he's a nice guy, and we've worked together in the past, and I look forward to that going forward as well. And also the majority in the county legislature. That's where I feel as though I have a little bit of an advantage in the sense that I served in the county legislature for 13 years and then served in the state senate. So there's no on-the-job training. I've been to this rodeo before, per se, Phil, and looking forward and humbled with the opportunity to be a candidate this year.
Well, getting back to voters and how they vote, how they choose, that's, to me, that's one of the things that is fascinating, because in years past, when Kennedy was president, and before that, politics and voting for candidates seemed to be more who's going to do a good job, who's going to address the issues, and now, fast forward to today, and the Democrat Party, and I'm not going to go hard on one party or another, but common sense is what rules my judgment.
For sure.
In the Democrat Party, when I hear, Zellner, for instance, doing a commercial, and I saw one today, he's running against Trump, okay? He's running against Trump's policies. This is a local politician who's dealing with local issues in Western New York, and he's running against the President of the United States. It seems to me that they try to influence voters by saying it's us against them. It's us against the rich. It's us against the racist. It's us against the dictator.
And to be honest with you, Phil, it ought not to be that way, because people are tired of the acrimony and all the animosity that's back and forth in government. We need to have more responsible and reasonable approaches, and people are willing to collaborate. That's where government is at its best, is when people are working. I don't get everything across the negotiation table, neither does the other person on the other side, or however many people are around this whole discussion. But when you bring all these good ideas together and all these strengths together, that's when you get the best outcome, not for a political party, but for the people of Western New York and the people of Erie County. That's what we should be motivated by, not politics, but outcomes.
Well, if you're a voter in Erie County specifically, or Western New York generally, you should be listening. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about what government officials should be doing and how you should be evaluating them for your vote, which is very valuable. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back to The Big Picture. My guest is Ed Rath, and we're talking about politics and government and what's going on here in New York State and Erie County. What it boils down to, and this is, I think, something that we don't talk about an awful lot, and that is, why do people vote the way they vote? We were talking before the show, my mother was a Democrat, my father was a Republican. The people I grew up with around North Buffalo, they were mostly Democrats, but they weren't Democrats because they were thinking about Democrats. They were Democrats because that was their family. Their family was a Democrat family.
Right.
They were Democrats.
Right.
If you're a voter in Western New York or anywhere in this country, really, how do you make a decision? Is it a popularity contest? Is it tradition? Is it issues? Okay, how do you determine who you're going to vote for? And, I would suggest that the vast majority of voters are not voting for qualifications or policy. They're voting for popularity or, their party.
I understand your point, and Phil, it's such an interesting question, and this was posed to me a couple weeks ago when I was actually on a panel at Buff State. And we didn't know the questions beforehand. And the first thing I said was, you want to look to the individual who's on the ballot who you believe is going to focus on the job description and the task at hand, which in this case, for what I'm running for, is for the Erie County Legislature. And it shouldn't be connected to party lines. It shouldn't be connected to anything partisanship. It should be connected to, does that individual understand and advocate for my priorities, for what's in the best interest of me as a father, me as a business owner, me as someone who is a senior trying to make ends meet during an affordability crisis. Is an individual who's frustrated with economic development and there isn't jobs for our children and our grandchildren in Erie County like there used to be in the past. So it should be about the individual and not the party line. And I've always made a joke that if you look at a ballot, it shouldn't be, it should be perhaps a jigsaw puzzle a little bit, where people go and find the individual and support the individual that they believe understands the issues, can advocate for them, and can deliver responsible and reasonable reform and change. Right now, we need reform and change in county government. We've had single party control in Erie County for a long time, and that's led to, in some ways, our government being out of touch and not being reflective of all of Erie County. It's a little more reflective of urban priorities and the city of Buffalo and the other cities' priorities in Erie County, and not the agricultural, the rural, and the suburban priorities. That's one of the things I'm pledging to work on as a candidate this year, and hopefully next year as a county legislator.
Well, you know, I've been in media for my entire adult life, and whenever I see a commercial for an election, for a particular candidate, the very first thing that I look for is, what's that candidate going to do? But if I see a commercial that says, my opponent is a bad guy, or the president is a bad guy, or something, or the rich people, you know, need to be punished, or if they point the finger at anybody else, I automatically think that candidate is shallow. They have nothing going. They're just, it's us versus them. I'm looking for a candidate who's saying, this is how I'm going to serve better for the people in my district.
Pay attention to the ads, because there's three kinds of political ads. There's positive ads, which are 100% positive. There's contrast, which will contrast each of the candidates, and then there's all negative. So there's three kinds of ads that campaigns use. And one of the things I like to do is use contrast to say, this is what I stand for, this is my track record, which I'm proud of, and I'm proud of the voting track record for the 15 years that I had served, and this is what my opponent stands for. But straight negative is a very, very tough thing, because it is off-putting to people who are already sick and tired, quite frankly, of all the acrimony in government.
You know, and that's the thing. There's nothing wrong with saying, this is my philosophy, this is what I will do, this is how I would like to solve problems, and this is what my opponent does.
Right.
When you're talking about specific policy, okay?
100%.
But if you say, my opponent is a dictator, he's an evil person.
Well, you know what that does? That triggers an emotion. And an emotion is very easy as a response, but when you have to get into facts and data and policy and analytics, that's a lot harder to connect with people on. But emotion is like that, right?
Right, it is. And that's, you know, that's the secret of good media penetration, is you get people worked up.
Right on.
Okay?
Yeah.
And it's easy to do that, and you just said that. Basically, when you have to discuss an issue, you need more than a 30-second soundbite.
You do.
Because things have to be explained, and the logic has to follow. But if you're just going to get somebody's blood going, you can do that in 30 seconds.
And I'll tell you, in government, it's very hard when you're elected to try to get your point across quickly, because there's so much that's swimming through your head, and you're trying to come up with these ideas, and you want this point out and this point out, and you're thinking of something as something else comes up. But you do need to make sure that it's quick and it's relatable and it's something that people can understand.
Well, you know, you hear things, you hear things like, you know, tax the rich, or my opponent is a racist and has racist policies, or, you know, you fill in the blanks, but basically it's pointing the finger.
Think of how
somebody
much
else.
this has devolved too, because think of the days of Ronald Reagan, or think of the days of JFK, and think of the fellowship and the collaboration, and think of Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan and Newt Gingrich and people who led by working across the aisle with Bill Clinton. That's where good government resides, is when you're connecting across the aisle, certainly advocating for what you believe, making your points, and 100% I think representing what you think the people want in your district. We need more good government. We need less visceral politics these days.
Yeah, it absolutely is a different political world than it was before. And, you want something that's got depth and integrity, in terms of who's serving you. You don't want somebody who's just basically a soundbite. And again, it's a difficult decision to make, to vote for somebody, but it's not hard to decide why you're going to vote for someone.
You know what I love is a concept that started off with our founding fathers, and that was the concept of citizen legislators and term limits, for that matter. Very, very important. What a citizen legislator is, and it started with our founding fathers, is you're a farmer, you're a lawyer, you're a doctor, you're a business person. You go to Washington for a period of time, you share your ideas, you share your perspective, then you go back to being a farmer, back to being a lawyer, being a doctor. And we need more of that in government, not professional politicians. I've been a private sector businessman for 35 years, and that perspective, being a small business owner for the last 4, has given me a different lens I look through now as I'm running for government. And I think more people need to be like that, not just career politicians who this is the only thing that they're going to be doing for their entire lives.
Very briefly, we've got about 5 minutes left. In the last 2 minutes, I'm going to talk about basically what you're running for, your seat on the legislature. But in between then and now, I'd like to talk a little bit about New York State and the governor's race. How, Kathy Hochul is local. She's been here in this studio.
Sure. I've been in the studio with Kathy in the past.
She's, and I've interviewed several hundreds of politicians in my career, all the way up to the President of the United States.
Nice.
And Kathy Hochul is the only politician that I've ever had for an interview that refused to sit down with me unless I told her what the questions would be ahead of time. She's the only one.
You didn't share these questions with me today, right?
No.
I would have liked to have that.
And I don't normally, but that was the only way I could get her to sit down was to give her a list of questions ahead of time.
Right.
That to me was astounding. That told me something about her. Bruce Blakeman is, a county executive downstate, and I don't know much about him, but how do you think that race stacks up?
Well, it's closer than people expected it to be at this juncture. Here we are, it's late May, early June, and the race is closer than people expected, and it's actually going along a very similar trajectory to Lee Zeldin and Kathy Hochul 4 years ago. And one of the things that's encouraging to me about Bruce Blakeman is the success that he's had in Nassau County. And this is a county that is many more Democrats than Republicans, but he's been able to work across the aisle, get successfully elected in Nassau County, and then deliver a platform of working on providing services that are efficiently provided and for the needs of the people of Nassau County, similar to what we have here in Erie County, fixing the infrastructure, collaborating with law enforcement. A critical responsibility of government, I believe, is to defend and protect the health and the well-being of its residents. And we have a great sheriff in Sheriff Garcia who's doing that right now in Erie County. So Bruce Blakeman has been successful in Nassau County. Now he's trying to expand that, if you will, across New York State. And he's traveling across the state. I look forward to seeing him in Erie County sometime soon and sharing my Erie County perspective with him, which I also learned as a senator too.
I'd love to get him in and sit down with him.
Well, let me see if I can make a little bit of a connection there. I can try at least.
Now, let's get to your race. We've got about 2 minutes left.
For sure.
Who is your opponent?
Yes, her last name is Rath. I don't know much about her, other than I know that she's been doing and providing a lot of good services within a number of the communities that she's a part of in Amherst. I welcome an opponent. I think it brings out the issues, it brings out the work ethic, and quite honestly, it helps you to organize your campaign a little bit. And in a campaign, I may disagree, but I will never be disagreeable with my opponent. And I like to work with open hands and not closed fists. And closing your fist in politics should be a last resort, not a first strategy. So I look forward to meeting her and getting to know her. And, you know, let's put our best foot forward as candidates. And I'm humbled and honored to be a candidate. And, you know, I was sort of called out of retirement a little bit here to run again, but it's an honor to be a candidate, and very, very humbling, as I had said. But also, I believe that I have a lot that I can bring to the table that I've learned over the years being a past public official, part-time public official, and then also a business owner. Those are some of my strengths, and look forward to sharing them throughout the campaign trail.
Well, okay, in the interest of fairness, if she, your opponent, would like to come in, we will give her the same amount of time.
Great,
and we'll
you should.
talk about issues. If you guys ever want to debate, I'm
Bring it on.
more than happy to host a debate.
That would be a lot of fun.
So, you know, in wrapping up, I just want to emphasize what we talked about a little bit, and that is your vote. People vote, you know, for various reasons, and you have to make a decision as to how you choose your candidates. But the thing that's not up for just, you know, for debate is that your vote is actually very important. You may be just one vote, but there's a lot of just one votes out there. And when you put all those votes together, they count, and you're an integral part of it. So, you know, I can't stress enough that voting is a serious responsibility.
Yeah.
It affects everybody's life in general, our lifestyle, our quality of life. Yeah. We owe it to each other to go out and be responsible when it comes to picking a candidate. Do your research. I don't want to be preachy about this, but this is important. And Phil, you may not hear that anywhere.
I couldn't agree with you more, and how important it is for people to go out and participate in the process and to go out and vote. And if you don't go out and participate in the process, you know, it's not the citizens doing their part, right, and playing their role, because those are my CEOs. Those are the people that I work for. But one other very important point, where we are this time of year, we're coming up on Memorial Day here in the near future, and I say to everyone, please thank a veteran, thank them for their service, and thank them for their sacrifice, because those are the true heroes in our community.
Yep. And watch our Vets show.
Right on.
Thanks so much for watching The Big Picture. Thanks for watching WBBZ-TV. We're your local TV station, and we really appreciate it. And community involvement, that's part of who we are. So thanks again, and we'll see you next time on The Big Picture.
Thank you, Phil.
Yep.